Hey everyone, Brian Christman here again, a Kierkegaardian reading of the Gospel of Mark. Today I want to just introduce, maybe in a little bit different way than I have been, but I want to introduce chapter 7 of Behold My Mother and My Brethren, the first volume in my Kierkegaardian reading of Mark. The title of the chapter is called The First Day, quote, in the Sacred History of the Contradiction. So it's basically, it's an account in Mark chapter 1, verses 21 to 34, where there's like a paradigmatic day, it's a paradigm. It's one day in Jesus' life that's like a paradigm of the gospel itself. Kind of shows an overview, introduces a lot of themes that become just, extrapolated upon in the gospel, in the entire book of the Gospel of Mark. So it's this first day, kind of a microcosmic picture of Jesus' ministry. The sacred history is just what I call the history of Jesus. The gospel itself is like the sacred history. That was somewhere I got that from Kierkegaard, but he called the gospel story of Jesus the sacred history. And the contradiction is what Kierkegaard called basically Jesus, the contradiction to humanity in a sense. That doesn't sound very appealing or maybe necessarily like good news, but we'll see here as we go. I'm not going to read this entire passage, but again, it's Mark chapter 1, verses 21 to 34. Basically, this is where Jesus, he had called some disciples. He had been in the wilderness, he had been baptized, went into the wilderness, fighting Satan, and was then he chose some disciples, and he had been baptized by John. But so basically everything before this has been the preparation of Jesus himself for his ministry, and then calling a few disciples. So here's where he kind of finally comes to town, so to speak. He kind of comes and starts, proclaiming the gospel. It says he went to the Sabbath, or on the Sabbath he went into the synagogue and he was teaching, and they were all astonished that he taught with authority. So there you kind of have him coming into the center of religious, of the Jewish religion at that time, the synagogue. So that's kind of like Jesus coming into the center of religion. And then it says immediately there was in the synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he, a demon-possessed guy, and Jesus, and the demon-possessed guy starts saying all these things, proclaiming things about Jesus, and kind of interrogating Jesus, and saying, "Have you come to destroy us?" and saying he's the Holy One of God. Anyway, so Jesus rebukes this voice from this demon-possessed man, and casts him out, and convulses the guy. He's rolling around the floor, I guess, or foaming at the mouth. I'm not sure what, but he cries out with a loud voice, and he comes out of him. So then they're amazed again, the people in the synagogue, that Jesus has this, authority. Not just authority that the religious people recognized before this, but now it's this authority over this demonic realm. And I almost feel like that's, in a sense, meant in Mark to be, for us today, to apply that to like the political realm, or the realm of where, in the world of people, politics is the realm that kind of controls everything and controls everybody, or at least tries to, and says they're going to make the solutions for all things, and all this kind of stuff. Well, so you have Jesus, he's recognized an authority in the religious realm, and now he's recognized as an authority in the political realm. And then Jesus goes into the house of Simon and Andrew, his disciples, and he heals Simon's mother-in-law. And then she had had a fever, and he heals her, and she the fever leaves her, and she just begins to serve them. And that's a little microcosmic picture of the beginning of this kind of new family, this "Behold my mother and my brethren," this kind of new family that Jesus is making, which is kind of apart from that religious picture, the religious realm, and the political realm. It's sort of a thing, a third thing. And so Mark's basically kind of about these three things, and how Jesus comes into this situation where there's these two realms, and then he starts creating this kind of third realm, this new family of Jesus, or of God. Just say the kingdom of God. It's a way to talk about that. And then after that, though, after the healing of Simon's mother-in-law, the whole city, it says, was gathered at the door, and he healed many who were sick, and he cast out many demons, and, and he wouldn't permit the demons to speak and all that. So you have this basically huge chaotic scene. This first day is like really kind of pretty chaotic. And so you could say, well, when Jesus comes into the world, as the contradiction, he brings chaos, and so I just want to read a couple things here. And I think Mark's gospel shows all throughout that. If you read the entire gospel of Mark, it's like chaos, Jesus comes into the world to bring good news, and it's chaos. So Mark's about that. And Kierkegaard, well, I had an epigraph for this chapter, a couple epigraphs, or epigrams, whatever you want to call them. And Eugene Peterson says, there's a surprising and disconcerting reticence in regard to Jesus. We don't figure Jesus out. We don't search Jesus out. We don't get Jesus on our terms. Jesus and the salvation that he embodied are not consumer items. So, consumer items, basically, well, let me read the next. So then Kierkegaard says, this is from Practice in Christianity, he says, the God-man is the sign of contradiction. The God-man is Jesus. The God-man is the sign of contradiction. And why? Because, replies Scripture, because he was to disclose the thoughts of hearts. Does all the modern thought about the speculative unity of God and man, all this that regards Christianity only as a teaching, does all this have the remotest resemblance to the essentially Christian? No. In the modern approach, everything is made as direct as putting one's foot in a sock. And the Christian approach is the sign of contradiction that discloses the thoughts of hearts. So if you take those things together, Kierkegaard was kind of getting at what Kierkegaard said, that we humans want to take Jesus, and as consumers, we want to fit him into our pattern of consumption. We want to kind of consume Jesus and his teaching and who he is into our way of doing things, into our religion, into our politics, those things I mentioned before. Jesus is creating a third thing here, something different. And it results in this kind of chaos, this contradiction to that religious kind of system, the political system. It brings chaos, which the rest of the Gospel Mark kind of demonstrates. So, we want to make it like it's all so easy, like Jesus came into the world, and, it's so easy to, fit him into our lives. It's easy to fit him into, so we'll have a Christian America, that's been the big idea of America for some from the beginning. And then, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, you had separation of church and state, and there was a little bit of a drawback from that. It was more of like a, religious freedom and not like a certain brand of Christianity per se, but still there was argumentatively, it's still the realm of religion and politics mixed together. Separation of church and state, but freedom of religion. So, but it's not, taking Jesus, putting him into the realm of human life. Kierkegaard said, it's not like putting your foot in a sock. It's not so simple. We can't make it like a consumer item, like Eugene Peterson says, because Jesus is the sign of contradiction. So it's just, if we think we can put him easily into, look at America today, the left, the right, they both think, oh yeah, we can just easily put Jesus into, we'll quote these verses and say, oh, Jesus, if Jesus was here, he'd be saying to do this. Or it's as easy as putting your foot in a sock. Just, this is all you got to do. Just quote some verse in the Old Testament or some verse in the New or whatever. Or don't quote anything, but just say, God bless America. And say, we're the ones that are going to put Jesus into this, into the situation in the right way. Well, he's the sign of contradiction. I don't think it's that simple. That's kind of my, 2 cents worth to take away from this, is that this really deep division in America today is basically because we've sort of made Jesus a consumer item, in my mind, for both, sides in this culture war where, he's going to serve this side, he's going to serve that side to the exclusion of the other side, because they just think it's easy. He's putting them in their sock, in their, Jesus fits like a hand and glove to their side, they think, but he's the sign of contradiction. not so easy to pin down Jesus, like Eugene Peterson said. And that's why Kierkegaard, he had this attack on Christendom. It was an attack kind of on the conservative, kind of probably mostly in his day. It was kind of an established church and state of Christianity. So it was kind of like a conservative thing, but there was a liberal element. He talked about this speculative, in this quote, he talked about, there's all the modern thought about the speculative unity of God and man, all that regards Christianity only as a teaching. Now I think that's talking about the leftist side, like this speculative unity of, there's this unity of God and man, and so it's as easy to fit Jesus into that as putting your foot in a sock, so it's difficult. Jesus literally brought chaos into the world, and we all think it's just gonna, work out really easily. Well, it's obviously not. But I think it's, this kind of problem of these authorities, of how Jesus fits into the religious authority, the political authority, and starting this new thing, this new family of God. How that all works together. Well, it's the topic of the Gospel of Mark. Mark maybe only introduces it. There's a lot of things I wish Mark had said more about. But anyway, super interesting stuff. It's super relevant, I believe, to today, to read the gospel and see, when you see it in these terms of Jesus coming into the realm of these authorities, the principalities and powers is what the New Testament calls the demonic powers. The principalities and powers, the same words for government and things like that. So it's the realm of the demonic, the politics. So I think we should all know that. What that means is too hard for me to explain right now. But at any rate, this is all taking Kierkegaard and the Gospel of Mark and Jesus as the contradiction. Is quite more than interesting. It's really a topic for our times, a topic for all times. It's the topic for humanity, and all I can say is keep watching, and we'll get deeper and deeper into this, because that's what Mark's gospel does, and that's what Kierkegaard does. So hopefully this just whets your appetite, and just this first day in the sacred history of the contradiction is just this little overview of what the gospel is about. And so that's just a snapshot to introduce this chapter and more of this book and my Kierkegaardian reading as a whole. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you'll come back soon. Thank you.